South Africa narrowly avoided a fiscal and political crisis after the National Assembly passed the 2024 Appropriation Bill, ensuring government operations continue. With coalition politics still fragile and divisions deep, this wasn't just a routine vote, it was a test of whether the new government of national unity could hold under pressure. Failure would have triggered service disruptions and economic chaos. Instead, lawmakers pulled together just enough support to prevent disaster and prove that, for now, uneasy cooperation in Parliament is still possible in this high-stakes new era. In a political climate riddled with uncertainty and the looming threat of institutional breakdown, South Africa has narrowly averted a crisis that could have had dire consequences for its already fragile economy. The National Assembly has officially passed the 2024 Appropriation Bill, ensuring the government remains funded and operational. With the stroke of a pen and the echo of a vote, the spectre of a shutdown or fiscal chaos has been temporarily banished, bringing much-needed, if fragile, relief to citizens, investors, and public servants alike. Before we break down this dramatic and deeply significant development, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Stay informed, stay ahead, and don't miss a beat when it comes to South Africa's most important political decisions and economic turning points. We bring you fast, factual, and fearless analysis every day, only here on Nation Brief. The passing of the Appropriation Bill came after weeks of tension within the newly formed coalition government. Since South Africa's national election earlier this year resulted in no single party obtaining a clear majority, the formation of a government of national unity, GNU, was both a necessity and a gamble. Comprising political rivals with differing visions, from the African National Congress, ANC, to the Democratic Alliance, DA, and smaller regional players, this fragile alliance had to prove it could function. And there was no better, or more high-stakes, test than the passage of the Appropriation Bill. Had the bill failed, the consequences would have been severe. Essential government services would have risked grinding to a halt. Public sector wages, including those of police officers, nurses, and teachers, could have gone unpaid. Infrastructure projects would have stalled. Welfare grants that millions of South Africans depend on might have faced delays. The mere perception of fiscal dysfunction would have sent shockwaves through the bond markets, weakened the rand, and reinforced the global narrative of political instability. But that disaster has, at least for now, been avoided. In a rare display of pragmatic unity, lawmakers across the political aisle came together and voted to approve the bill, ensuring the continued functioning of state institutions and affirming the new government's ability to govern. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, who presented the bill to the Assembly, described the vote as a triumph of reason and an act of stability over chaos. He reminded the chamber that, whatever their ideological differences, all parties shared a duty to protect the country's democratic institutions and its people. This moment wasn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet or parliamentary procedure, it was a referendum on whether South Africa's experiment with coalition governance could survive its first major test. Political analysts had warned that failure to pass the bill would be interpreted domestically and internationally as proof that the GNU was unworkable, a mere paper alliance with no practical power. The success of this vote now offers some proof that compromise is possible, and that even in a deeply divided legislature, the national interest can still prevail. However, while the bill's passage may be a short-term victory, the underlying tensions remain. Negotiations over the bill were reportedly intense behind closed doors, with coalition partners demanding amendments, adjustments, and safeguards. The DA, for instance, pushed for greater transparency on state-owned enterprises and tighter fiscal controls on provincial spending. Meanwhile, ANC members insisted on protections for key social spending programs and rural development. The ultimate version of the bill reflects this tug-of-war, a balancing act that satisfied just enough of the coalition to earn the votes needed to pass. Still, not all members were pleased. Some members of opposition parties walked out before the final vote, calling the bill a sellout of principles and accusing the coalition of backroom deals that excluded voices from smaller but vocal parties like the EFF and ATM. These moments of dissent hint at the fragility beneath the surface of unity, and they foreshadow the likely challenges ahead when future legislation, especially around land reform, national security, and energy, comes before Parliament. For the South African public, the passage of the bill might not feel like a victory parade, but it's a critical development that deserves attention. It means that school meals will continue to be served. Roads will still be built. Social grants will continue to reach their recipients. In a time of political upheaval, economic pressure, and global uncertainty, that kind of basic continuity is more valuable than ever. The private sector, too, has welcomed the news. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange saw a small uptick in response, and several business leaders issued statements praising Parliament's commitment to governance. Confidence may still be shaky, but this vote has helped stabilize expectations. International investors watching from afar now see at least a glimmer of reliability in a country often accused of legislative gridlock and ideological volatility. This moment is also a pivotal one for President Cyril Ramaphosa, who has been walking a political tightrope since the election. With multiple factions to please and coalition management now a daily chore, the successful passage of the Appropriation Bill boosts his standing, if only temporarily. It offers him a chance to consolidate his leadership, reassert the importance of unity, and showcase the functionality of the new political era he promised when campaigning. Yet, Ramaphosa and his coalition partners cannot afford to be complacent. The budget itself still faces scrutiny from economists and watchdog groups. Questions remain about whether South Africa can afford all of its commitments, especially with stagnant GDP growth, high unemployment, and rising debt servicing costs. The bill may have been passed, but implementation is another battlefield entirely. Whether the funds are spent efficiently, transparently, and with real developmental impact remains to be seen. Civil society, too, will be watching closely. Already, activists are calling for greater oversight on how money allocated to infrastructure, healthcare, and education is used. With South Africa's history of corruption and mismanagement, public trust remains low. The real victory will not be in passing the bill, but in ensuring that it translates into tangible improvements in the lives of ordinary South Africans. As the dust settles on this legislative showdown, one thing is clear: crisis may have been averted, but South Africa remains in a delicate state of political and economic balance. The next few months will be critical in proving whether this unity can hold, or if the fractures will deepen as more contentious bills and reforms are tabled.